Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to How to Prepare Your Pitch. My name is Colin Mahan. I'm a director of programs at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit that's building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. At the center, we celebrate Black entrepreneurs every day. So please join us in celebrating Black Business Month in August as well. As you may have just seen in the chat, the NASDAQ Center, along with our partner Mentor Cloud, launched a free mentor matching platform for entrepreneurs called Mentor Makers. You can create your own advisory board to guide and inspire you with in-the-moment mentorship from topic experts and professionals dedicated to providing exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So find or become a mentor today by using that link in the chat. Mentorship matters to all entrepreneurs. Their success is dependent on it. Quick housekeeping, we're going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event, so please submit those questions for us in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout our presentation. We'll try to get to them all. Now, none of what we do here at the Center could be possible without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, EPM, and HubSpot. We're grateful and humbled by their contributions. Now, during these still in so many ways unique times and challenging times, we're curious on how sentiment is among the entrepreneurs that we work with. So before we get started with our presentation today, I'm going to launch a quick poll to let us know how you're feeling about your business. Are you optimistic in just survival mode, feeling a little bit of that anxiety from inflation and all the other things that are going on in the world? Let us know. All righty, thank you all for voting. I'm gonna let this roll for another second or so. I'm gonna end this poll. Thank you for sharing. Looks like optimism is on the rise, but understand there's some anxiety, some survival mode, and a little bit of fear from what's going on in the world and just markets in general. Hopefully, our presentation today will help alleviate some of those negative sentiments. So without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome in the chat to our special guest, Allison Byers. Allison's the founder and CEO of Scroobius. Allison, welcome.
Hey, Colin, it's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So excited to have you and looking forward to learning more. Over to you.
All right, I'm going to set up my screen share here. I am so happy to see the optimism of this group. I agree. I think this is going to be a great fall season, particularly for startups and pitching and fundraising. It's going to be active, maintain all of that positive energy. So I'm excited today to talk about how to prepare your pitch. And please do utilize the chat and the questions. I know Colin and team are going to be monitoring that, and they'll call attention to anything that we can talk about to make this the best use of time for you. I've got my contact information at the bottom of this title slide here. I know you'll get the replay or take a picture, or there's links in the chat, but please feel free to connect with me. I'm very reachable. I'm very active on social media. Happy to connect after this if people want to talk more. And we've got a neat little exclusive for anybody watching this that you can go to on our website to check out. So I'm going to jump in. I warned the team, I packed so much content into these workshops, so I'm going to try and get through everything for you. Little bit of background on me. Why should you listen to what I have to say today? I have spent more than 15 years building and leading data-driven startups, and I've got my MBA. Scroobius is a startup as well. I founded it 2 years ago. Before Scroobius, I launched and ran a startup medical device company that was spun out of MIT and a hospital system here in Boston, where I am, where I raised about 10 million for that company. And I've raised an angel round for my current company as well. But with everything that came with running that company, what really stuck with me was the gender bias that I experienced during the fundraising process. And that stuck. And when that company was acquired, I spent a long time researching the space of fundraising and pitching itself. And you very quickly run across some pretty devastating statistics, like 2% of VC dollars going to women, less going to Black founders, and Latinx, it's similar, lots of marginalized communities who are systemically blocked from this funding. So I founded Scroobius to bring this education and a technology innovation to help address this and try and get more capital to founders through a better process. I'm also a frequent advisor and mentor. I angel invest myself. I'm a parent of 2 young kids, a strong proponent of parent entrepreneurs. We're awesome. And I'm going to stop talking about me. Super quick, I'm not going to talk a lot about our platform today. You can all look that up after if you have any interest, but it is a scalable online platform. We've worked with hundreds of founders, so much more material in there than what we're going to cover today. Check it out if you have any interest. Now I'm going to dive in. So we make the best use of this time. Okay, so we've got about 45 minutes. I'm going to go over high level how you think about preparing a pitch for fundraising. So we're talking about going after equity fundraising here. And really, I want to set the stage by talking about how pitching is storytelling and de-risking. It's a different type of lens to look through when you're putting together this pitch. And I think it can be very opaque and hard for founders to appreciate that it's not intuitive to think like an investor. It's intuitive to sell what you're doing, to sell to customers, talk about your product. But an investor might not be your target customer. You're not trying to get them to buy what you're selling. You're trying to get them to invest in your company, and they're looking to make a profit at the end. So they're looking to get more money out of it than what they put in now. That means that they're looking for different types of things out of this presentation than almost any other presentation you're going to give. They have to understand that opportunity, even if they're not going to buy what you're selling. They have to understand the opportunity, and they have to assess the level of risk that they're comfortable taking at the time that you're asking for this raise. So there are certain things that need to be communicated in your pitch to address both of those areas, both the content and the risk associated with your opportunity. There are lots of frameworks out there, lots of models for how you put together a pitch deck. I know it's frustrating because there's no one right way to do it and everyone's very opinionated. We have a framework we recommend. It's based on tons and tons of secondary and primary research. And again, we've worked with hundreds of founders and investors in the past couple of years, but it's still not one size fits all. But this is what we're going to go over today. These are the core 10 sections of a pitch deck. So your pitch should address each of these things. And we're going to go through each section at a fairly high level to talk about what does that mean? What actually goes in it? Okay, so that's what we're going to cover today. Little bit of setting the stage before we dive into those 10 sections. Another trap that founders fall into, I'd like to point out, is what the goal of your pitch is. What are you working toward? What is the desired outcome of this pitch? It's almost never to get a check. You're not pitching with the expectation of getting a check at the end of the pitch. Your goal is almost always to get more time, get a first meeting, get a second meeting, get more meetings with more time and more people heading into due diligence. That's how fundraising is done. It's not pitch and get a check. So when you understand that goal, it helps you decide, well, what do I need to put in my material to reach that goal? It's different than getting money right after that meeting. That's just not how fundraising works. So when you think about it that way, or you think about versions of your pitch, really, I encourage you to think about what is the time that you have and what is the goal of this pitch. If it's your very first one, maybe it's a send ahead or you have a quick first intro meeting, you should have about 5 minutes worth of content. It should take you 5 minutes to go through it. So think less about the number of slides and more about how much time you have. And your goal, just convince someone you're worth more time. So what do you need to do that? What content and what areas of risk do you need to remove to convince someone of that? If you get a second meeting, you're going to have more time. You can go into more detail, include a bit more information. And you want to use the rule where your content, what you're presenting, should take about 1/3 of the time that you have. So you have 2/3 for conversation and Q&A, because that's the good part. And that's how you build up your rapport and your relationship. So just keep that in mind. Your goal is more time. Okay. I'm going to give you some top tips for some slide design, just really easy stuff that you can implement, stuff that's important to know, and then we're going to get into those 10 sections. All right. So stuff to keep in mind when you're presenting. This is a really big one. And again, I like to point out the things that maybe you don't think about as often or aren't as intuitive. But in today's world, it's hybrid, right? You're going to be giving virtual pitches and you're going to be giving in-person pitches. And the way our brains work as humans is different when we're in those different situations. So know that, use that to your benefit when you're presenting so that you can give off the right signals. So when we are in person in the room with somebody, we as people want to make eye contact. We want to match somebody's gaze. What that means is when you're in the room, if you were in the room with me, you're not right now, if you were, you'd be looking at me first and my slides would be behind me and you'd be looking at those slides kind of backup secondary because you know that I can see you. So you want to match my gaze. If you're virtual, like you all are now, you still feel my eye contact because I'm staring right in my camera, which you should train yourself to do too. But you know I can't see you. I wish I could, I can't. So you're using my slides as primary. You're going to look at everything on there first, then you're going to listen to me. The reason this is so important is that we cannot both read words and hear words at the same time. Our brains can't do it. Think about the last time you were reading something and someone came over and started talking to you and you were like, can you just wait? I can't. And then you have to put one down. That person has to stop talking. You have to put down what you're reading. You can't do it. This is why it is so important to make your slides glanceable, because however long it takes you to read that slide, it takes the investor to understand the point of your slide, they're not hearing your words. Or conversely, they're hearing your words, but they can't absorb what's on your slide because it's too much information. That's why glanceable is important. It's not just to look snazzy. You want to convey information as quickly as you can. Doesn't mean you need a designer. It just means knowing how you can organize information on a slide so it's easy. So there's some basic principles here. One is to use a header statement. And I'm going to go over this. This is the next slide. This is so important. If you remember anything from this presentation, please use header statements. So we're going to talk about that more. But it goes at the top or on the side of your slide in a predictable place that tells me the point of this slide. You also want to have your slide numbers in there. This is how investors mark where they have questions or where they want to come back to things. If you don't have the slide number, it makes it hard for them. If you include your logo on every slide, just move it small down to the bottom out of the way. We know who you are. We know what your company is. Don't put it big across every slide using up all that real estate. And you want to use bullets. Our eyes like bullets. It's easy for us. So you can use fragments of sentences. It doesn't have to be fully written out. Just chop down the words and put them in things that are easy for our eyes to read. If you include any kind of a chart or a graphic or a table, just make sure you clearly label it. Get rid of anything in there that doesn't need to be there. Remove lines, extra stuff. Write the title of what I'm looking at. Cite where it comes from. What are the axes? Again, easy. I should look at it and very quickly know what it is I'm looking at so I don't have to take the time to figure it out. And then leave generous space. Whatever color the background of your slide is, make sure there's a lot of it around so that it's not jumbled and our eyes know where to look on the slide. Again, so we can easily read that information. Just some basic principles there of design. Okay, let's talk about header statements. This is such a huge one. I can't even tell you. Please don't label your slides with things like problem, solution, market size. Give me more. Every slide should have one major point. One, if someone remembers one thing from this slide, what do you want it to be? Write it at the top. It's okay if it's 2 lines. It should be an active statement. Tell me the point of this slide. And then everything else on the slide should directly support and back up that statement. Prove to me why that statement is true. That's how you think about the slide. I can tell you, investors absolutely will look through just your header statements and decide if they want to go back and look at the rest of the deck. So a good test to see if you're using your header statements to guide someone through your story, through your pitch, is to copy and paste them all into a paragraph. It's not going to read like you wrote it like a paragraph, but it should kind of make sense. It should lead me through the story of this pitch opportunity. Here throughout this deck, I use real examples. I only use real examples. Clearly, some are mine. These are from one of mine. And it really can transform your deck to have the statement. Here is the point of this slide. This is what I want you to know. It's an active statement, and then supporting information behind it. It also helps you know what to put on your slide, because if you start putting information in there that is not directly related to that header statement, it doesn't belong. Put it on a different slide or in your appendix. So you make it easy for the investor, you control your narrative, and you make it easier for yourself to know what to put on the slides. Hugely transformative of your deck to use header statements. Okay, not quite to the 10 yet, but I do want to talk about your title slide. I know it might not seem important, but it is. Every slide is real estate. Use it. Your title slide tends to hang around for a while on the screen. Also, if you email it, it shows up as a little thumbnail image. So someone might even just look at that image and decide if they want to open the file or not. People really do this. Investors get on average like 50 decks a day. The active investors, VC funds even more. You're up against all those decks regardless of competition with your business of just what do they want to read? What's easy for them to go and look at? So make someone want to read your deck. On your title slide, have your logo, have product screenshots or photos if it's a physical item, something that shows what your solution is. A mock-up is okay. Have a short description of what your company does for who. Have your name as presenter and any relevant social handles where people can reach you, and put a little copyright down at the bottom. It's just good to have. Just have that. It makes a strong title slide. So we're going to take a look. Again, I love to show examples. I think it's really helpful for folks to see what others have done and learn that way. These are all real, cleaned up a little bit just so we can focus on that statement, because it can be a little confusing for people. It's not marketing language, but a description of what you do. You're informing the investor. So if we take a look, for example, the bottom row here, these are kind of before slides. And if we look at True Wine, it started off, their description was Duolingo for wine. So the problem with that is, well, what if the investor doesn't know Duolingo? Then it means absolutely nothing. And it's also ambiguous. What about Duolingo? Is it the gamification? Is it the user experience and the UI? Is it something about the back end or the tech stack? You're leaving it up to the investor to try to figure it out, and they're not going to give you that time. So it turned into fun, accessible wine education for the next generation of wine lovers. Much more clear. I know what this is going to be about. I have a good sense. I'm going into it with more interest than trying to figure out what you mean by you're the X of Y of something. So just get it down to simple language, what you actually do. Okay, I did the, the stage setting. I hope you're all with me. It's always hard in these webinar formats when you don't know. I hope everyone's enjoying this. Write in the chat if this is useful, if there's something else you want to know about, maybe give a statement like, I'm going to use header statements. Do that, because you absolutely should. Okay, now we're going to get into the core 10. So what do you put in there? What's that core content of your introductory core pitch? First, love the comments. Awesome. First is your mission. Why are you doing this? So for every one of these sections, I'm going to go through a couple slides. First, I'm going to tell you about the investor mindset, the risk that they're assessing, and then the things you should be looking for as you're building your slide to make sure that you have. Then we're going to go over an example. So that's the format we're going to use for the rest of this. First, the investor mindset for mission. Why is mission important? When you're at the early stage of fundraising, even when you reach Series A or sometimes a little later, you as founder and CEO are the steward of the investor's capital. The investor is trusting you to make decisions with their money and to execute on the things that you say you're going to and set the strategic direction for growing this company. You. They have to know why you are doing this. It's a big deal to start a company. Again, this is so important if you're Series A or before, so important to understand the motivation, your mission for starting it. And the risk that the investor is assessing is whether they think you're going to quit when things get too hard. Because inevitably, building your startup will be harder than you think it will be, I promise you, which means you have to be motivated to stick with this and see it through, even when it does get that hard. So your motivation has to go deeper than potential financial return. And that's what you describe when you talk about why you started this company and what the mission of the company is, that there is a deeper resonance there and you are personally connected. So when you're working on this slide, think about, are you aligned with the mission? Are you showing that you are committed? Are you committed to doing this for 10 years? That might be what the next 10 years of your life is. Is that something that you are passionate about? And is it clear? Is there clarity behind the mission here and why you started this? So we like to talk about this as your origin story. What was the impetus for starting your company? Think back to it. Did you have a personal connection? Did you experience a problem and there wasn't a good solution, so you wanted to go make one? Do you have technical expertise that lets you see something others can't see? What was it? A lot of origin stories are, like I shared with you my origin story, that I experienced a problem, I researched it, found that this was a huge problem for a lot of people and that I had an innovative idea to solve it, and I am now committed to that. That's a common story, that you experience the problem and it pretty naturally leads in to your problem section. So it's a pretty natural transition there. Now, when we get into the problem section, you want to make sure that it's concrete, that you have defined a problem and you have quantified that problem and it is specific. You're not talking about your solution yet. You're making a compelling case that this problem exists independent of your solution, but you know what's next is your solution. So you have to define that problem to a place where you can actually solve it, because that's how you're guiding someone through this story, right? Your pitch is that story, it's a narrative. So in the problem section, the investor has to believe that it's real. That's what they're looking to understand. Is this real? And is it big? And is it acute? Is someone feeling a pain point so strongly that they are actively searching for a solution? That's what I need to know. And that there are a lot of those people or a lot of those potential customers. So the risk in the problem section, remember, you're always taking away risk that this is going to work for the investor. That's how you make it compelling and you get that next more time. The risk is that there isn't actually a big problem to solve. Maybe you did experience one, but it doesn't translate bigger. The risk is that the pain isn't being felt acutely enough that people are searching for a solution or would be willing to pay for a solution. And then the next risk is that it's really not solvable. It's too big a problem, it's too hairy a problem, or technology isn't there, that it's not something that can realistically be solved right now. So let's walk through an example. What does this look like on a slide? Here we see a before. So if we look at that before one, it had a label, right? Just says problem. And then it has a stat about how big, disrupting a big industry. It has a giant generic graphic. That's where my eye goes, and it does not convey any information. So it's just kind of taking up space there. It has a couple statements that are just statements. There's no data really behind it, so they're not substantiated to me. And then there's a quote. So looking at that, I'm not really sure if I'm convinced that there is a problem here, what the problem is. Now we rejiggered this slide, the after, still says problem. If you feel more comfortable with the label, it's okay, but there is a header statement underneath it. Life is online and older adults are left behind. That is the major point of this slide. One key statistic to back that up. 75% of users 65 plus do not feel confident on their devices, and it's cited at the bottom, so it comes source. Very convincing. I believe it. I can go check it out if I want to. That's pretty compelling. That's a big stat. And it leads to modern tech is designed without the input of older adult needs. I can tell where we're going. This is leading me along a storyline, and this is a clear problem to me. So just some changes in how you put this content together and how you can think about it from the investor perspective, your goal of compelling the investor to move that story along. So after your problem section, now it's your solution. How do you solve that problem? And you want to make sure that you are directly solving the problem you just talked about. Don't solve a different thing, right? You control your deck. So this is where defining your problem to a place where you can solve it is important. So for the investor, again, they are looking to see that, okay, I know why you started your company. I believe you, there's this big problem. Now I need to believe that you can actually solve it. Your idea is a solution to this problem. So the risks for them that they're trying to decrease as they watch your pitch is that the solution can't actually be executed for some reason. It's not feasible. That it isn't fully addressing the problem you just convinced me of, or that what you're building isn't actually needed, that people aren't going to be out there searching for the solution. So you want to talk about it so that it is clear, that it seems workable, and that it's robust and complete to solve the problem you talked to me about. So looking at a couple examples here, again, there is so much to know about all this stuff. Please connect after. We put out tons of content as well. This is like a super high Cliff Notes version of this. Please include screenshots of your product or photos or whatever it is, how you can show somebody in a tangible way what your solution is. I've pulled up two examples here. These are both wireframes. They're mock-ups. It's okay if that's the case. But it is the fastest and easiest way to help an investor understand what your solution is. Pick out one piece of the customer journey. How does one case example of how a customer would solve their problem with your solution, the key steps they take in how they interact with your solution, and show me that horizontally across the slide. Please don't have your full pitch go out where you never show a picture of what you do. They're not going to understand. They're not going to know. You have to show us what your solution is. Even if you just have drawings that you made, I don't care. Show me in a stepwise, how does a customer solve their problem by interacting with your solution? I don't care how complicated it is. You can get it into this format in a way that makes it clear and tangible. So that's my best advice on your solution. Okay, now we understand what the solution is. Those top three sections are the most important parts of your pitch. It's okay if they're more than one slide, because if I, as the investor, don't believe that you started this company for a good, deep reason, if I don't get why you're doing it, if I don't believe there is a real problem to be solved, and if I don't believe you're solving that problem, nothing else in this deck really matters that much, because the rest of this is about business mechanics and execution. That's why those top three are just so critical to really get in a compelling place. Focus a lot of time there. Okay, we know what your solution is. How do you make money with it? You have to have an idea, even if you're pre-revenue or pre-product, you need to have thought through your revenue model and your business model. Who is paying you and how much are they paying you? Keep in mind that your end user might be different than who your paying customer is. And your business model is about your paying customer. So focus there. Who is writing you the check at the end of the day? So for the investor, they need to easily understand how you're going to make money. Make it easy for them. Don't make it super complicated. Who are you charging? How much are you charging them? And for the risk side of things, you're removing the risk that monetization won't be feasible, right? That there is a feasible way that you could make money and that you've done some work that tells you that people would be willing to pay under this type of business model. You're removing the risk that you won't be able to generate revenue. You have a good idea of how you're going to do that and price points that will match with your customers. And you're removing the risk that you don't understand your customer segments, that you have some ambiguity over who you're selling to. These are the risks you are trying to take away with the content in this section. So make sure you consider what are your primary revenue drivers. You might have multiple monetization opportunities, but which ones are primary? Are all the relevant customer segments included? You can have more than one type of business model depending on the segment. That's okay too. Lay it out, and I'm going to show you an example of that. Is your business model logical? Do you understand it? And is there financial viability? Can this really work in terms of unit economics? So again, I like to show examples. I also like to pull out examples that are a little messier to show that you can do it. It's really how you describe it and the reasoning behind it, so investors understand what you're trying to communicate to them. So first, just an example where there's B2C and B2B. Fine, different models are fine. Just lay it out clearly so we understand. And I've got an example here, again, from one of my own decks, and we've raised for this company. It's okay to talk about now, next, and later if you're launching in phases, right? So we have a product that's in the market for founders. That's where we've started to monetize. We're post revenue, and I lay that out. What is that? Next, we're going to have our next product come out. That will be a different target. That will be a different price point. And I lay out what that's going to be and say quite openly, we're going to test it. We're going to test and explore it. And we have lots of future monetization opportunities. Here's what we've thought through. Totally okay. Just be honest about it. The investor is looking to understand how you are approaching your business so that they can assess the viability and the risk of your business being successful. Okay, now we know how you're going to make money. How much money can you make? This is your market size. Market size is really important because it helps the investor understand if your company is investable for them. There's some math behind it. When I talk about market size, and I'm going to go into, I've got this section, I've got 2 more slides coming up because I know market size can be a challenge. I know, but you can totally do it. I'm talking about a bottom-up market size, and I'll tell you what that means. But for an investor, a large addressable market doesn't on its own mean that you're going to be successful. They might still pass on a huge market opportunity, but it determines how viable this opportunity is for their type of investment, whether it's angel or venture, or even if it's debt or some other vehicle. There are returns that that investor is looking to make, and there has to be enough potential for revenue to get that return out of it at the end, along with whatever competition is also in the mix. That's why it's important. For venture, well, actually, I'm going to get into this in a couple slides, but you're removing the risk that doesn't justify investment. There's nothing wrong with it, but it has to be big enough to justify investment, or it just doesn't make sense. And that you understand the assumptions behind your market size, that it's real and believable. So there's 2 ways that people commonly talk about market size. One is top down. This is where you say something like industry spend is $4 billion. And if we just get 1% of that, it's this much market opportunity. That is less credible. That's not how investors like to see it. That's more context, but there's so much spend in there that has nothing to do with what you're selling. So investors really like a bottom up. This is your revenue opportunity based on your customers and your business model. It's specific to you. Really high level, I'm going to go over the terms here. Again, I do a whole other workshop just on market sizing, and in our platform, we have a workbook you can download that makes this easy and approachable. I promise you don't need an MBA to do it. You can do it. But when we talk about this, this is TAM, SAM, and SOM. So your TAM is your total addressable market. This is basically saying if everyone who could buy what we're selling, our target customers, did buy what we're selling at the price we're selling it, that's how many dollars that would equal in a year. That's your TAM. It is your total revenue opportunity. That's the math behind it. Your customers, what you're charging them, and everyone buying it. That's your TAM. Your SAM is your serviceable addressable market. It's basically giving your TAM a little haircut. It's saying realistically, there are certain segments of these customers that just aren't going to buy what we're selling, or we're not going to reach, and so we're discounting it by a bit. Then there's your SOM. This is your serviceable obtainable market. This is your short term. This is saying basically for the length of this fundraise, which is usually about 12 to 18 months, or you can think about it the next 2 years if you want, who are we going after? What is that base? And it can either be a percent of your SAM, or you can do a separate calculation if you have a regional rollout strategy or targeting certain customer segments. How many of them are there? And what would you charge them? And all of these are dollar values, all dollar values. Okay, I'm going to move on, but feel free. We've got lots of content here. I know this can be challenging. This is how investors want to see your market size. If you're going after venture, your TAM needs to be at least $1 billion to just make it investable to support a venture investment. Okay, I'm going to keep speeding through. I know I've got like 10 minutes. We can do it. I told you I always pack more in here. So competition. Now, what does your landscape look like? And this is from the customer perspective. So for the investor, they want to see that there are competitors. If you say you have no competitors, that is a giant red flag. Everybody has competitors. And your competitors could be other companies, or it could just be ways that people are solving this problem. You could be up against a behavior change. So really think about it. And it's a good signal. Having competitors validates that there is a problem to be solved. It means people are working on it. So it's not a bad thing. So the risks here that you're removing is that the problem has no solutions. If there's nothing out there, then maybe it's not solvable or doesn't need one. And you're removing risk that your business isn't substantially differentiated enough from what's already out there. So there are multiple ways to show your competitive landscape. The two big ones are a 2x2 matrix and a table. We recommend making both. Again, we've got more content on how you do both, but the preference that I've heard from many investors is this table, or it's a customer-centric approach. And basically you're going to say, okay, I'm in the mind of one of my target customers. They are considering using our solution to solve their problem. We're in the first column. What other 3 to 5 things are they considering? It's competitors or other just behaviors, or how are they going to consider what to solve their problem with? And then the rows are the things that they're considering. What are the benefits they're looking for? Then you fill in the table, right? You're going to have checks because you're going to show we understand what the customer is looking for to solve their problem. And then there should be checks. You should not have all X's. But visually, you can start to see the gaps where your competition doesn't solve these problems and you do. And that's how you communicate why somebody would buy your solution over using something else. Okay, next section, why now? Why now is not in every framework. It's really important. It really is. This has 2 factors to it. Why is now the right time for your company to exist? And why is now the time for you to be fundraising, which usually is about your traction. So from the investor mindset, when they're looking at the why now, this is where you want to really bring up, this is what's happening in the economy or society or something that is creating momentum, that there are tailwinds behind what we're doing that make this the time to do it. This is the time for it. And then with the traction, it's we've hit a point of traction or milestone achievement or something where we need the funds to grow, that this is fuel for us. This is why we're raising right now, because we've de-risked it to the point where it validates doing a fundraise. So you're removing the risk that the timing of your solution is going to hinder your success, either with getting the company going or your fundraise. When you talk about your time for the company to exist, if you're going to talk about COVID and the pandemic, make sure that you talk about how you're accelerated by it, but you're not defined by it, right? And again, I'm bringing in real examples here. This is a company right at the beginning of the pandemic is when we worked with her, and she developed a way to do remote eye exams, and clearly hugely accelerated need there. And she's done very well, but she also made sure to draw the comparisons that show this will exist beyond, that whatever is happening, this is a vision that will persist regardless of pandemic. And then for your traction, it works really well to do a chronological timeline. It's really helpful for the investor to understand, when did you start your company? and what were the major milestones that you achieved that get you to today. And then I have a sense temporally of why are you fundraising? Have you hit these milestones? And you can even go a little in the future if you want to show milestones that you'll achieve after this fundraise. So it's a really useful format to use to show that traction. Okay, go to market. Go to market is all about your customer acquisition strategy. So here the investor is looking to see that you have a thoughtful plan for how you're going to reach your target customers and sell to them and convert to them. It's really, do you understand? So you're removing the risk that you understand your customer, you don't understand your customer's needs, right? You're showing that you do have founder market fit, you get them, and you're removing the risk that you might struggle to acquire or retain these customers. That's what you're communicating in this section. Apologies for my voice going out. I'm doing many pitch workshops lately. So a framework that we like to use is thinking about this like now, next, and later. Right now, your early stage, what are your scrappy, quick, inexpensive ways to reach your early adopters, right? That's who you're trying to convert at the early stage. How are you going to reach those champions, those early adopters? What channels are you going to use? Don't just say social media or content marketing. Be more specific. Show that you've made a plan, right? You need to have meat in this deck. You need to actually have some substance. Where are they? If you're doing content marketing, what type of content and where? And how do you know that that's where they are? What tells you that? Next, when you move beyond your early adopters, how do you grow? How do you reach people who aren't actively looking for your solution, but would be fairly low-hanging fruit to acquire? What channels do you go to there? And it's important to know if you're doing B2B sales or B2C, right? They have different capital use implications. Are you hiring sales staff and key account managers? That's very different than maybe if you're paying influencers or doing a lot of social media ads. And then later, what does growth look like? What do you envision when you get into growth stage? How are you going to expand? So it's just a nice framework to have in your head as you think through this. And then team, we're nearing the end, guys, we're doing it. So team, your founder market fit. Here, from the investor's perspective, it's really nice to kind of bookend your pitch by starting with people. So you start it with your origin story, why you as founder started this company, and then you end it with, here's the team I've assembled to execute. This is why, here's who's helping me. This is how we're going to make this happen. And that's what the investor is looking for. Again, that de-risking. They're taking away the risk that you can't recruit the people needed or that you don't understand the roles and the skills needed to execute on everything that you just told me about. So show that you have founder market fit. I've shown my own slide here because we are early stage. It's okay if you have a small team. What you really want to show with the bullets that you pick out is the key experience or key qualities somebody brings that says they're the right ones to execute on this vision. This is how we're doing it. And then it's okay to bring in advisors and investors as well if they're really helping you, right? So I have hands-on advisors and investors. They are filling the role of management team before I'm able to go hire my full management team, which is how startups usually happen. So say what functional area they're helping you in so that you're showing you understand your skill gaps and that you have found people that complement your skill gaps to have a robust team. Okay, we made it through the core 10. Your deck needs those things. There is some optional content that I didn't cover. I'm going to go over it really quickly. You put this in depending on the context of your pitch. So first one, always get asked, what about financial projections? It does depend. Research shows that at the early stage, particularly for founders who identify as underrepresented, investors will hang on your projections and be much more critical of them. So I actually don't recommend including them in your introductory deck because remember, the goal is to get a meeting. Someone shouldn't need to see your projections to be compelled to spend more time with you. It's not a ticket to the game. Don't put them in there. You might hurt yourself. They also might contain some sensitive information And an investor will not sign a non-disclosure agreement before you send them your pitch. So if there's something in there you wouldn't want someone else seeing or a potential competitor seeing, just don't put it in there. Say, would love to share it. We have all that information, but I'd like to wait until we have, we meet in person or we have a live discussion. Easy, right? If you do include them, again, make it really easy to understand, a clean chart, and pull out what you want someone to know from it. Projections are pretty made up. Everybody knows that, particularly if you're early stage. If you're later stage, they're not, but if you're early stage, they are. So what is it that you want someone to know about the assumptions that are powering these projections, and put them in some bullets and have that header statement. Exit strategy. This is another one we get asked about. Should I talk about exit strategy? Again, depends. This is a little bit of know your investor. Does this matter to your investor that you're talking to? Early stage, usually it doesn't. Usually it's just too early. You don't really have to know that. Some angel groups require it. Some venture firms require it. So find that out and put some thought into it if they do, but I wouldn't spend a ton of time on this unless you're in an industry like biotech where it would impact decisions you make because you are heading toward a specific exit scenario, an acquisition. Then you do want to think about it because it would impact how you use the funds. And then finally, the ask. I don't recommend putting this in your core deck because of general solicitation regulations. So we've done a really thorough review of this area. What does SEC care about in terms of soliciting the general public? And they care. You can't send your ask unless you know it's an accredited investor or an entity that is allowed to make investments, right? That is regulated. So don't put it in your core deck in case you forget and you put it on a platform where you don't know if everyone is accredited, or you're sending it somewhere and you're not sure. You would then be soliciting the general public for investment, and you can't do that. If you're sending it to a known investor or someone who's accredited, then yes, put it in. So it's easy enough to have this in your appendix, move it in if it's appropriate, PDF and send, but don't keep it in there so that you can use it for broader purposes. The slide itself should have, again, clear information, right? Just easy. How much are you raising? Why are you raising it? Use of funds, any details about the instrument that you're using, and then most importantly, your milestones. What does this funding help you achieve? Where are you set up for once you're done with the raise? Have that information in there. Okay, and then your thank you. Have a thank you slide. Put your contact information on it. Again, it hangs up on the screen, right? It's hanging up right now. Make sure people know how to reach you. Put your social handles in there because investors like to go try to find things that you've put out into the world, show that you have some brand or some thought leadership. So put everything out there, make it easy. And that is the end of this. I'm proud of myself, everybody. It's 2:50. I only went 5 minutes over what I was supposed to, and we've got plenty of time now. I'm happy, Colin or Anna, if you want to highlight some questions to get into those.
Let's do it. Well, if you want to stop screen sharing, we can just have a conversation around these questions. But first off, thank you so much. And I love that you ended on the thank you slide with your thank you slide, which is awesome. Some great questions that came in. Is the same approach here suitable for raising funds for an investment fund?
I guess I need a little more clear. Does that mean pitching an venture fund?
Like
Or does that mean a
somebody's
GP looking to raise from LPs?
Yep, I believe GP raising from LPs.
Yeah, so there are a lot of similarities between particularly emerging fund managers who are looking to raise from limited partners for their own fund, and founders who are then pitching those general partners for their funds. But it is a different deck. And there are some similarities, but the fund has different mechanics, and the opportunity that the fund presents is different than what a startup would be presenting in terms of their opportunity. So, there is other content around that, and we've actually been approached to create some similar stuff like that for that use case, but it isn't quite the same. Yep.
Alrighty. Let's see. Can you go over the difference between those in diligence that have a long business plan, maybe relationship with investors you've already met, versus quick glance 10 to 20 slides? Can you just add a bunch of addendum and short glanceable deck?
So I think there's a couple questions in there. One I heard is what does due diligence mean versus your pitch? And then should you have different versions of your pitch? I think those were kind of the two questions. So diligence, this is where usually you've had a few conversations at least with the investor, or if it's a fund, you've met others on the investment team and they say, okay, I'd like to get into diligence. Do you have a data room? That's really where your diligence lies. A data room, it can be software. It can also just be like a Google Drive folder. It's just a repository for all the other information somebody might want to look at who's considering investment. When you open up your data room files, it is okay to ask for an NDA because you're going to have sensitive stuff in there. That's the point when you would say, sure, sign an NDA. Some investors still won't. And then you have to make a decision if you're okay with that. But you're going to have a basic set of documents in there that are more the later stage fundraise you do, right? But you're going to have your incorporation documents, things about your stock option plan, any market research that you've done, your projections, your pitch deck. You know, I'm happy to share. We have more resources, information we can share about what you might want to put in a data room. But that's what's meant by diligence, is they're past the pitch. They're really interested. They need to understand everything else. And if it's a fund, that's what they use to make their investment memo that they present to their deal team to say, this is why we should invest in this company. The different versions of your pitch, I'm a firm believer of making things easy for yourself. And I think founders go crazy when they have multiple versions of like, here's my presentation pitch, and here's my send ahead pitch, and here's my long one, and here's my short one, because you update it. It's a living document. And then when you make a change in one, you have to remember to go make a change in everything else. So there is a happy medium if you utilize those header statements and then have supporting data on the slide. So it is, someone can understand this slide without your talking to it, but it's not so much information that they're not going to take the time to read it. There is that happy medium. Get your core deck, what we just covered today, have as many appendix slides as you want in there, going into as much detail as you want for later conversations. And based on the goal of whatever pitch you're doing, move them in, PDF it, send it, move them back out. Then you have one file to maintain and you're just moving how much content is in there.
Love that efficiency. Let's see, how do you make your origin story relatable to build in an emotional connection?
Yeah, oh, I love that question. And it's such a good one. So I'm a huge believer, and I have a lot of background in understanding human psychology and behavior to create more impactful presentations. So part of the reason why starting with your origin story is a great way to start with emotional resonance is when a person, any human, attaches an emotion to words that they're hearing, it's been proven that they pay more attention and they retain information for a whole half hour after that, which means you're setting up your pitch to be more successful if you can get someone to emotionally respond to you at the beginning. And usually your origin story has an emotional resonance, right? So put a picture of yourself. Put a picture of yourself doing whatever the thing was that you experienced that made you want to start this company, right? If you have a company in the childcare space and you're a parent, put a picture of you with your kids. It's okay to make it personal. It's better because you elicit that response. So use humanizing pictures and pull out bullets that are the key highlights of that story that you can then talk through, but it should take you a minute or less. Don't spend 5 minutes on your origin story. Get it to the highlights.
Love that. All right, we're going to do a lightning round because we are running out of time, but I want to get to as many of these as possible. And you're doing great, by the way, Allison.
Awesome.
Let's see. Can I skip the competitor side? I feel like I'm wasting time talking about other companies.
No, don't skip your competitor slide. That is a red flag. If you say you're wasting time talking about other companies, that is a red flag. You have to understand your landscape. And it has other implications that you're not maybe thinking of, but the investor is. Remember, they are seeing hundreds of decks. You don't know what they're seeing. and they're used to seeing things in a certain way, and they're looking for stuff. So with your competitive landscape, again, it doesn't necessarily mean other companies. Like if you're selling to doctors and you need them to change a behavior to use your product, ooh, they're going to be more likely to just keep doing the thing that doesn't work as well because they're used to doing it, right? An investor is going to see that as a risk. And if you don't even talk about that, they're going to think you don't understand your buyer, that you don't appreciate how big a challenge that's going to be.
Love that. Somebody was asking, and I love color theory, about what colors are most effective in pitch decks.
I don't know that I have the expertise to talk about the right colors to use, but one thing that I see people do all the time, that's a huge mistake, is to not use colors that contrast enough with each other. So like you'll have a background color and then you'll have text that is a lighter shade of the same color. It's very hard to read. Make sure that if you have text on top of a color, it is a stark contrast so that it's easy for somebody to read it. That's why usually you have a white background or a very dark or a black or a dark blue background with alternating font, light or dark, so that you have that contrast. You just want to make it easy on the eyes. Don't have neon colors, right? Don't have things that are harsh. Just make things easy. You can tell from my color palette, I actually want our brand to be different than other brands in our space. So I'm not using blues and greens. I'm using oranges and teals and bright colors. That's what I want to bring about, but they're in a tone that is softer. So it's not, abusive to someone's eyes.
Love that. And it's probably even way too much detail, but if you're curious about colors, there's a lot of stuff on color theory. There's a reason why yellow is in almost every single one of the fast food chains. But I don't want to get too much into that. But yeah, and that's too much thought process. Based on what you said, I'd say do that. Don't have things that hurt people's eyes.
It's the content. It's the content. Someone's not investing because you used yellow over a different color, but they might not take you seriously if you send them a deck full of neon colors that they can't look at.
Yeah, love that. Do we have to take into account colorblinded folks? I think that's another one just to check out in a different vein of color science. Are investors more interested in your 2-year plan for the funds you're raising or the vision of what the business will be? I've gotten mixed messages from investors.
So it depends what stage your company is at. If you're a pre-revenue company, then what investors are really interested in with your projections is what is driving them. What are the assumptions and the levers that have to move to hit the projections that you're putting in there? Everyone knows they're made up. Everyone knows it's not real life, right? But they need to understand your thinking and that it's realistic, that this is where revenue comes from. This is where cost comes from. This is what we have to spend to reach that revenue, which is why I'm raising money, because if I don't spend it, we won't reach that revenue. Those are the conversations when you talk through projections that indicate this is a good one, that this is a good conversation. If it's just, tell me about that number, that doesn't, what's that, just the actual dollar values, then it's not as good a conversation because they're not testing that thinking. And it's tied to your vision of where you see the company. They're not distinct things.
I love that. Well, I know we can spend much more time together, but we are at time. Allison, thank you so much for joining us today to share your insights, expertise, and knowledge on this topic. I know it's something that so many people have different opinions on, but you broke it down in a perfect fashion. If anybody is interested in connecting with Allison, we're going to follow up with her contact information and our link to her website to learn more and to sign up if you want to have a conversation with her or her team. But Allison, thank you so much. This has been a great talk, and I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. Thanks everyone for joining. Over 100 people here the whole time. That's amazing. Thank you I didn't get to read all your comments. I'm gonna go read them all later. Thank you for writing them. Please connect with me, engage with us, on the public sphere. Thank you so much. Good luck, everybody, with all your pitches.
Thank you so much, Allison. And as we close out, I got one final poll for you all who are still on. If you'd like to learn any of these topic areas, just vote. Also, we've got a survey feedback form if you want to give us more detail than just sales, finance, marketing, or funding. And also, if you're interested in any of our other courses that are coming up, and a lot are around VC and different forms of various capital that are available for entrepreneurs right now. sign up. All those links are going to be in the chat as well as in our follow-up email. But appreciate you all joining. And Allison, thanks again. Hopefully everyone's pitches are getting a little bit better thanks to this. Thanks again, Allison.
Thank you. Bye.